Our top focus at this hour, it is one of the most crucial days for Russia, Ukraine, the United States and its European allies. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have landed in Geneva. The two leaders will meet today in a bid to defuse the escalating tensions between Russia and Ukraine. As the situation stands at this moment, a Russian submarine has test-fired a caliber cruise missile against a land-based target from the Sea of Japan. This is according to Russia's defense ministry. This comes amid Russia's announcement of Navy that it will conduct a series of military drills this month. These drills will involve all the fleets in the Atlantic, Pacific, Arctic and the Mediterranean. The Russian military moves are being closely scrutinized. This is because of a troop build-up near Ukraine. Moscow has time and again denied any intention to attack Ukraine as of now. Russia, meanwhile, is sending 2 battalions of the S-400 surface-to-air missile systems to Belarus to join military drills next month. This includes 8 anti-aircraft missile systems each. The Russian military forces and hardware began arriving in Belarus this week for the Allied resolve drills. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry has also released footage showing its soldiers conducting drills near annexed Crimea. Soldiers practiced rapid deployment of the BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launchers. They carried out tactical military exercises at a shooting range in the Kherson region. There is rising fear as of now that a simmering conflict in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region could erupt into open war. Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimea in 2014. The US has given a green light for Baltic nations, meanwhile, to rush US-made weapons to Ukraine with Lithuania. Lithuanian Defense Minister has now confirmed that his country was sending defense and other aid to Ukraine. This is in order to deter Russia from attacking. Latvia has signaled at its intentions to send both lethal and non-lethal defense equipment to Ukraine. Estonia says that it has plans to send dozens of Javelin anti-tank missiles. The US Treasury has announced sanctions against 4 Ukrainians. These individuals were said to be involved in operations by Russia's FSB intelligence service. The alleged aim was to undermine the Ukrainian government and the economy. The 4 individuals include 2 current members of parliament as well as 2 former officials. 2 of the men were involved in disinformation campaigns directed at the US presidential election in 2020. A statement by the US Treasury said that the 4 Ukrainians act at the discretion, or rather the direction, of the Russian Federal Security Service and are engaged in Russian government-directed influence activities to destabilize Ukraine. Back in Berlin, Blinken first met with his counterparts from Germany and France and a representative for Great Britain before he sat down for bilateral talks with Germany's new foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock. He continued to drum up support from European allies. This is all to present a united front ahead of the last-ditch attempt to defuse tensions. Blinken accused Russia of threatening the foundation of the New World Order with its military build-up. He called for concrete and a global response if Russia decides to invade Ukraine.
I have come to Berlin at a moment of great urgency for Europe, for the United States, and I would argue for the world. Russia is continuing to escalate its threat toward Ukraine. We've seen that again in just the last few days with increasingly bellicose rhetoric, building up its forces on Ukraine's borders, including now in Belarus. Russia's repeatedly turned away from agreements that have kept the peace across the continent for decades. And it continues to take aim at NATO, a defensive voluntary alliance that protects nearly 1 billion people across Europe and North America.
Russia has accused the West of plotting provocations in Ukraine. The spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry has said that the West's claims of a Russian attack were a cover-up for staging large-scale provocations of their own. She was seemingly referring to the delivery of weapons to Ukraine by the British military transport planes.
В настоящее время западные и украинские средства массовой информации, а также официальные лица стали еще более активно тиражировать спекуляции на тему скорого вторжения России на Украину. Так они это формулируют. Мы убеждены, что целью этой кампании является создание информационного прикрытия для подготовки их собственных масштабных провокаций, в том числе военного характера, которые могут иметь самые трагические последствия для региональной и глобальной безопасности.
For more updates on this news development, joining us now is Trent Murray from Berlin. Trent, thanks so much for joining us on WION at this hour. My first question to you. Now, the world will be watching closely when the US Secretary of State Blinken sits down with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. This, of course, comes at a time when tensions between Russia and Ukraine and the West are at an all-time high. Washington has now given a green light to Baltic nations to send US-made weapons to Ukraine. Fears of a Russian invasion of Ukraine are also high. So what will happen at this meeting? What will be the tone and tenor?
Yeah, all eyes on Geneva really right at this moment. Antony Blinken having this whistle-stop whirlwind tour across Europe. He was in Kiev a few days ago, Berlin yesterday, as you mentioned, but really today is the main event when he comes face-to-face with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, to try and talk about those ongoing tensions, really trying to defuse the situation as concerns continue to grow that a conflict could erupt any moment. Latest estimates suggest that over 100,000 Russian troops have now encircled Ukraine, are parked on the Ukrainian border, and if indeed President Putin gives the order, the US believes they could invade at very short notice. So going into this meeting, the stakes really could not be higher. We've just heard from the two sides a few statements before they sit down and talk. Antony Blinken essentially reiterating the message that we've continued to hear from him this week, saying Russia has massed considerable forces on Ukraine's border and it continues to send forces to near Ukraine, so the risk is very serious. Now, what will really form part of the talks today is these so-called security guarantees that Russia has demanded. It has given a list to NATO of concerns that it allegedly has about NATO expansion, and it essentially wants NATO to make pledges around some of these statements. We've heard from Sergei Lavrov going into this meeting that some of those demands include proposals to withdraw forces of other NATO countries from Bulgaria and Romania, and also to make a promise that Ukraine will never be admitted to NATO. Well, I have to tell you, those types of requests probably won't get much traction, and that is because Washington has said those types of demands are simply non-starters, that they are supporters of individual countries making their own individual choices.
Absolutely, Trent. Thanks for those updates. Just elaborating further on some of the points that you made, we're also getting reports that at a time of high tensions, Russia is in fact sending 2 battalions of the S-400 missile systems to Belarus. It's holding massive drills across Europe. How are these maneuvers being perceived in Europe? Is it a tactic to intimidate Ukraine?
Yeah, well, I think it certainly is a tactic to intimidate Ukraine, but I think it's having a spillover effect and also causing considerable concern across Europe. I mean, it is worth noting in all of this that Russia is saying that it doesn't have any plans to invade Ukraine and that much of Europe's reaction is an overreaction in some way. But Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, countered that point earlier in the week when she herself was in Moscow speaking to Sergei Lavrov, and she essentially told him publicly at the press conference that when you park 100,000 troops on your neighbour's border and you do military exercises and you pour troops into countries like Belarus, it's very hard not to interpret that as a threat and a prelude to a possible invasion. So I think that really speaks to the concerns that are held not just here in Berlin, but really right across Europe. Foreign Minister Baerbock joining her French and British counterparts and the US in essentially saying the only way through this is dialogue and really calling on Moscow to de-escalate this situation very, very quickly.
Trent Murray, thank you so much for joining us from Berlin, and thanks for all those updates. We at WION, of course, will be tracking all the updates once Blinken sits down with Lavrov. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.